Hello, everyone. It's Gordon Causey coming to you live. And as always, unscripted. Got a bit of a glare coming from the overhead light, but the joys of no production values. I'm right now coming to you live from this in our house, what we call the junk room, or sometimes the spare room. And when I was in the army, we called it the army room because this was where all my excess military kit would go. Still have some sitting here. What was this? Winter gear. Put that on. I never actually wore this, I don't think, not even once. There we go. Oh, that's crazy. Crazy stuff. What else did I have? Looks like I had two versions of that. And my old my old name tags, my name on them in camo. And looks like I've got an old, yeah, one of my old berets. There. Get Yeah, and right there we go. One of my old berets. That's the Jimmy. I was in the communication branch. That's the Greek god Hermes. And Anna Monarchy has showed up. I see I've got a couple people here already. Not doing this at my normal time. My normal time for videos. I typically start sometime around 10 p.m., sometimes a little before, sometimes a little later, sometimes after midnight on rare occasions. And on rare occasions, I do an early one. And this is Candy, the wonder dog, who she's hounding all over me for some love because I've got one of these. Because I am trained. She has trained me well. I have to give her a treat, otherwise, I get no peace. So shake a paw, lay down, lay down, speak, speak. Keep speaking. Speak. Come on up. Get your treat. Now she'll eat that and then she'll lay down. So uh, I have two people on the live chat already, or more than that. There are lots of people showing up. Fill up the comment field. I've got a poll up there for you to vote on if you want. I think it should be showing up, asking whether or not the Liberal Party of Canada should be allowing people under 18 years of age, 17 and under, to vote for the next Prime Minister of Canada. I feel like my video tonight is going to be a little bit of a civics lesson as well as commentary on the Canadian political landscape, what's going on. And a lot of Canadians aren't aware of the fact that we do not directly elect our prime minister. We have this Westminster system of parliamentary democracy wherein whichever party has the most seats in our House of Commons at the end of an election or at any time, uh, although it's at the end of an election, whichever party has the most seats, whoever that party's leader happens to be gets to occupy the prime minister's office, gets to hold the position of prime minister of Canada. And Canadians do not directly elect our prime minister, not like in the United States where they vote for their head of state. And in point of fact, the prime minister of Canada is not Canada's actual head of state. The head of state in our parliamentary system is actually the crown, the king. Used to be the queen, now it's King Chuck, is the head of state. No law becomes law in Canada until it receives what is referred to as royal assent. And that is when the king's representative, our governor general, I forget her name, I think it's Simon, she has to put pen to paper. She has signing authority on behalf of the king. And once the governor general has signed legislation, only then does it become law. And so, getting back to the current situation, what we have is Justin Trudeau has announced his intention to resign. He is still the Prime Minister of Canada, but he has said that he is going to resign once the Liberal Party of Canada conducts a leadership race and a robust and secure, believe that at your peril, a robust and secure leadership race, that at that point he will step down and whoever the party selects will then become the Prime Minister of Canada. And right now, Canada's Parliament is quote unquote prorogued. and prorogued means suspended. So the House of Commons is not sitting. There's no scrutiny. There's no question period. It's crazy. I've got Sheriff of YouTube has shown up, and he says that I sound like the CBC. God, what an insult. Nobody has ever been prime minister without holding an elected seat or riding. No, not true. John Turner, after Pierre Elliott Trudeau, Justin Trudeau's dad, vacated the leadership, he announced his intention to resign. The Liberal Party held a leadership race. John Turner won that race. And after becoming the leader of the Liberal Party, he then a member of the Liberal Party with a seat in a Vancouver area riding. It was called Vancouver Quadra at that time. I don't know if the riding still exists because we're constantly adding new seats as the population grows. And so electoral districts ridings get the map gets redrawn, and sometimes the names of ridings will change. But he became prime minister without having a seat in the House of Commons. And I believe it has happened. I would have to check back in history, but there have even been cases, I believe, again, I'll have to check this, where the Liberals have won or the Conservatives have won, but their leader did not win their own personal seat, but they're still the leader of the party, so they're still the Prime Minister of Canada. And typically, what would happen in a case such as that, and I believe it has happened very rarely, is that a member of the governing party in a secure, so-called safe seat then resigns for the purposes of having a by-election, and then the leader, because you don't have to have residency in a particular riding to run in an election. That's just we have they're referred to often as parachute candidates. When John Turner ran in that riding in Vancouver Quadra, John Turner was a Montreal-based lawyer. So what's a Montreal-based lawyer doing running for a seat in Vancouver? You can parachute a candidate in. Um, anyway, so what is happening now is that the Liberals are having a leadership race. Whomever they pick will occupy the Prime Minister's office. They'll be in the PMO, the Prime Minister's office. They will be the Prime Minister of Canada. And just so you know that I'm not speaking out of my nether regions, I'm going to share right off the Liberal Party of Canada website. I'm sharing my screen now. There it is. This is Liberal Party of Canada. You got tabs for Justin Trudeau. You can find your MP, your candidates for the upcoming election, information on the 2025 leadership race. You can volunteer, register, donate. You can switch the language to Francais, to French. And here it is. Liberal Party of Canada announces date for leadership vote. This was put out on January 9th, 2025. And let's just go right down to the criteria. And what they write here is that protecting the integrity of our democratic process while still engaging as many people as possible is one of the Liberal Party of Canada's top priorities. Well, that sentence is a grammatical nightmare in my eyes because which is the priority? Is it protecting the integrity of the democratic process, or is it engaging as many people as possible? Which one takes priority? Which supersedes which? That is my question, because it seems to me they're more interested in engaging as many people as possible than they are in protecting the integrity of the democratic process. Now, let's the national board also made the decision to update the requirements for becoming and maintaining status as a registered Liberal. These are the people who can vote for our next Prime Minister. You have to be a registered Liberal. There are 300,000 plus Liberals registered liberals in Canada. And so to be a registered liberal, a person you must only be 14 years of age. And it is what it is. 14-year-olds, 15-year-olds, 16-year-olds, 17-year olds who cannot vote in a federal election can vote for our next Prime Minister of Canada, because this process is being governed by the Liberal Party of Canada, not by Elections Canada. The Liberal Party is handling this in-house. You must support the purposes of the party. You must be a Canadian citizen, have status under the Indian Act, and here's a big one, or be a permanent resident of Canada. So you got to be a citizen or have status under the Indian Act, or you have to be a permanent resident of Canada. So what that tells me is that people who are not even Canadian citizens will be able to vote if they are simply permanent residents. And what defines a permanent resident? Does that include a student who's over here permanently, working on their bachelor's degree and is planning to be here for the next 4 years? Is that a permanent resident? How do you differentiate between a permanent resident and what are they going to do? Be checking here, I've got a bill. I've got my electricity bill. That shows I'm a permanent resident. Do you trust the Liberal Party of Canada to vet the registered Liberals vigilantly to ensure the integrity of our election process? I'll be honest, I do not trust them to be zero. You must not be a member of any other political party in Canada, and while registered as a Liberal, not have publicly declared an intention to be for a candidate for election to the House of Commons other than as a candidate of the party, the Liberal Party. Don't say Liberal Party because it's the party. And they say, we look forward to running a secure, fair, and national race that will elect the next leader of the party and the next Prime Minister of Canada. For more details, please visit our website. I'm not going to go there. And I'm just going to read what's being written. Let's see. Sheriff of YouTube is writing that this is what Sheriff of YouTube says, that I am registered to vote down Carney. Their whole process is a scam, Gordon. So it sounds to me as if Sheriff of YouTube is saying that he is a registered Liberal Party member and that he will be voting down Carney. Well, you're going to be one of the few. This is a coronation. Carney will be our next Prime Minister. He will be the next leader of the Liberal Party. I do think I have a good idea as to how things are going to unfold. I think March 9th, they'll have the vote. Carney will be installed as Prime Minister, as leader of the Liberal Party. And then within a day or two, I expect that he will go to the Governor General and say, he doesn't need to dissolve Parliament because Parliament isn't sitting right now, but there's probably some legal process that has to go on to formally dissolve the current sitting Parliament, and then for the purposes of having a general election. And that is what I think will happen. Anna Monarchy writes something good. A permanent resident is someone who doesn't leave when their visa expires. And Sojourner Didymus, who's all the way in the Netherlands, Thomas, says, so as I understand you, Canada is not having elections, but something like the primaries in the US, to a degree, yes. However, in the United States, it's somewhat different. In the United States, individuals are either registered as Republican, Democrats, or independents. You can be an independent, you can be a Republican, you can be a Democrat. And then each state will have a primary. And when the Democratic Party holds its primary, registered Democrats only are allowed to vote in that primary, although there are some states where they have open primaries where everyone is allowed to vote regardless of party affiliation. So that's the American system. And then the Democrats will put up their candidate, the Republicans put up their candidate, then there is an election. There's no analogous situation in the United States. If Joe Biden had resigned his position as president of the United States, he's not the leader of a party. He's, the president of the United States, while they're either Republican or Democrat, they're not the leader of the party, so to speak. Obviously they hold a lot of sway, they have a lot of influence, they have a lot of power, but they're not the titular leader of the party. But at any rate, if Joe Biden was to resign, there wouldn't then be Democrats voting to see who replaces him as president. There's a line of succession, and the first one in line is the vice president. Likewise with Trump. If Trump was to suddenly resign the presidency for whatever reason, then J.D. Vance, his vice president, automatically becomes president. We've seen this historically when Richard Nixon resigned the presidency in 1974 or 75. He resigned the presidency. Gerald Ford, his sitting vice president, took the oath of office and became president. Likewise, when John F. Kennedy was assassinated in 1963, was it? I think it was 63. Lyndon Johnson, his vice president, became president. Let me read the rest of the rest of Sojourner Didymus's comment is that isn't the vice president prime minister appointed at the same time as the prime minister? Fishy. No, in the U.S., our system is vastly different from the American Republican model. This Westminster system is vastly different. What happens is the prime minister will actually name a deputy prime minister. It was recently Chrystia Freeland was the deputy prime minister, but that's not the same as a vice president. And what happens in the case where the leader of the party resigns, if he's a sitting prime minister or not, whether he's in opposition or occupying the prime minister's office, either way, a leadership race has to unfold. So that's the situation we're in right now on this day, February 16th. So we've got less than a month, 2-3 weeks to go until that actual vote, when the Liberals will announce on March 9th. I imagine will happen that same day. They will announce, and I'm predicting it, that the Liberal Party members have chosen Mark Carney to be the next Liberal leader, and as such, he is taking over the prime minister's job. He's occupying the prime minister's office, but I expect that immediately thereafter, within 48 hours, he will be going to the governor general asking for a formal dissolution of parliament, meaning this session of parliament that started in 2021, it's officially over, and we will have an election in 3-4 weeks to form a new parliament. And then whichever party wins the most seat after that upcoming election, whoever that party's leader is, will then become prime minister. And Canadians, we don't directly elect the prime minister of Canada. What we do is we vote for individual candidates in 343 ridings. I think that's the number. In the upcoming election, there will be 343 ridings, and each riding will have a Liberal, a Conservative, an NDP, a Green. If you're in Quebec, there will be a Bloc Québécois, there'll be a PPC, and maybe some other lesser known parties, Christian Heritage Party, for example. Even the old Rhinoceros Party still runs candidates. There are some libertarian candidates, some Communist Party of Canada candidates. I tend to put the Rhinoceros, the Libertarians, the Communists and such, I put them in the fringe category. Typically, in most Ontario ridings, there are 4 parties with a legitimate shot to elect members, and they are Conservative, Liberal, NDP, and even the Greens might elect a couple, get a couple, maybe 3 seats at most. Let me read what's being written. Sheriff is writing, please to cheer yourself up, watch a bit of Fox News over Canadian mainstream media. And Hank Holiday has shown up, an American from Texas. So we got a bit of representation. We have Canadians, an American, and Thomas Sojourner Dinibus, who is from the Netherlands, Dutch. Anne Monarchy is saying good evening to Hank. And I think evening works. It's early evening, even in Texas. Um, and Anna Monarchy is in my own time zone, in the where we have been dumped on. We've gotten in my area, Northumberland County, east of Toronto, so eastern Ontario. I think we got the majority of this snowstorm, and we probably got 40 plus centimeters out there. Been out a couple times showing shoveling, which is when we get to know our neighbors, because Canadians are much more socially uptight than my American friends. When I lived down in the United States as a kid growing up, when we'd move into a house, within the first 2, 3 days, there'd be knocks on the doorbell ringing multiple times, and it would be neighbors coming in over to say, "Hey, welcome to the neighborhood." And I just realized something. I've been sharing this screen the whole time. Sorry about that. Uh, and Anamonarchy as well has been inundated with snow, and Anamonarchy is in Toronto in the big smoke. And you'll notice there, that's an old surplus army cot right there with the Canadian flag in the US. A decent representation, given that, I am Canadian born and bred, but I did spend 10 years, almost 10 years, growing up in the United States of America. And Hank is 1 hour earlier than us in the Eastern time zone. So he's in that central time zone, and it's 5:22 p.m. there, an hour earlier than Toronto area, Toronto, Montreal. Got a number of people, although Danny FE isn't here, and there's someone else, Eat Me. Few people come on my station from Montreal. I don't know. Did you guys see the poll that I put up? I'm wondering, did it show up? I don't know if anyone voted on it. I'm going to leave it. But it kills me that in Canada, in this country, in the year 2025, that we're allowing 14-year-olds and people who are not even citizens of this country, just have to be a permanent residence as per the Liberal Party of Canada. You either have to be a citizen or have permanent residence. It doesn't say and have permanent residence. So you can be a citizen of Canada, but living abroad, and you can vote in a Liberal leadership race. Or you can be a foreign national with permanent resident status. How is that possible in this year? But to a degree, it speaks, there's a level of consistency within the Liberal Party, because Liberals are post-nationalists. They don't want there to be national identities anymore. It's so funny to see the Canadian our Liberals wrapping themselves in the flag when you're post-nationalists. You don't like nationalism. You want to be citizens of the world, and you want to let anyone in the world who just moves to Canada, doesn't even have to take out citizenship, doesn't have to understand our system of democracy, doesn't have to understand Canadian values, Canadian roots, Canadian history, just become a permanent resident, and you get to participate in the election of Canada's next prime minister. It is absolutely insane. Sojourner Didymus didn't see any poll. I'm going to add it again, and I'm going to write it out. Should the LPC, that stands for Liberal Party of Canada, allow those 17, if I can type, and under to vote for our next PM? Question mark. Start poll. Okay. So you're welcome to vote in that poll if you can see it. And so far, well, we'll see how it goes. Uh, and then I have Sojourner saying we had a whopping 3 millimeters of snow. Yes, that's millimeters. Animanarchy writes, I wasn't really substantially politically aware to understand how awful geopolitics were until I was about twice 14 years old, almost 30. Almost 30. You know, we are in such a mess in this country. We are in such an absolute mess in Canada with the manner in which we're allowing the Liberals to conduct this leadership review or this leadership race that is going to be installing the next Prime Minister of Canada. And it's going to be Mark Carney. I like to call him Mark Print More Money Carney because he's a big fan of this term quantitative easing. And why do they call it quantitative easing? Because it's a branding statement. Because if they said what it really was, you know, printing more money, people would go, well, that's dumb. Printing more money. Don't you remember the Weimar Republic in Germany that predated the Nazis when the German economy was destroyed because they nationalized the printing press and just started to print money? And they, in any little jurisdiction, any city, town, village, county, whatever, I don't know what the political divisions in Germany were back then, but they had all kinds of different currencies floating around because everyone was printing money. At one point, they nationalized the paper mills, the printing presses, and they were only printing the money on one side so they could double production, don't have to print on both sides. And you know, the old stories about guys going with a wheelbarrow full of Deutschmarks in order to buy one single loaf of bread, and you had to spend your money right away. You got paid after work every day, and you went to the shops and spent your money immediately because inflation would rise prices the following day. And so people know that printing more money is a recipe for inflation. And so rather than calling it printing more money, they call it quantitative easing. Quantitative, we're printing more money. Easing the restrictions that limit the supply of the currency in the marketplace. Quantitative easing. Yeah, it's like dietary enhancement. Yeah, yeah. I'm not. I'm gonna. I'm going on a regime of dietary enhancement. So you're gonna get fat. Well, no, 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 no. It's a program of dietary enhancement. I mean, dietary sounds good. Enhancement means more. I'm going to eat more. Dietary enhancement. How can we improve the health of Canadians? Dietary enhancement. How can we face the economic challenges we're facing in this country? Quantitative easing, print more money. It's crazy what is happening. And this is who we have who is being coronated as the Liberal leader. It is Mark Carney. They hate him in Britain because of quantitative easing, because he drove the cost of living through the roof as when he was governor of the Bank of England. We're in for a heap of trouble, and now we have Canadian politicians all going down to the U.S., sending their state delegations down to the U.S. to beg Washington not to impose tariffs on us. And it's like it's a foreign country. What, you think we're the 51st state and you can just go and petition Washington? We're not the 51st state. If we were the 51st state, then the whole question of tariffs wouldn't even be in place. We'd have a US dollar instead of a 70-cent Canadian dollar. And we'd have a military that could protect our North rather than relying on a foreign country for our military protection. So things are. So I don't know how many votes I got on the 4 votes, and it's 100% no. I'm going to end the poll now because, yeah. I expect that's going to be the result. Everyone is going to say there's no way that 17-year-olds should be electing Canada's next prime minister. Duh. No Canadians under the age of 18. You should have to be a Canadian citizen, not just a permanent resident, and you should have to be at least 18 years of age, which is voting age in our federal elections, not 14-year-old like the girl in my thumbnail picture for this video. I mean, kids today, they've been programmed to not know the difference between a boy and a girl. And these are the individuals we're allowing to pick the next prime minister of Canada. And basically, the reason they're doing this is to ensure that Mark Carney is installed. It's a coronation. Chrystia Freeland never had a chance. The Liberal Party is never going to elect a female as their party leader. They talk the talk, they never walk the walk. Trudeau talks about being diverse and inclusionary and big on women's rights, and I'm a feminist. He said all those things, but then in practice, he denigrates women. He kicks them out of office if they don't behave like a good little girl and do as you're told. With Justy Raybould, what was her name? I can't remember her first name. Jody Wilson Raybould. Um, Anne Markey's writing, what's next? Lion, tiger, and bear flu? Oh, goodness knows. Goodness knows what could be. A few things have been happening in the US. Number one, many will know that President Trump has reinstated all military members who left the forces because left the American armed forces because they refused. They were not of the opinion. They did not share the safe and effective opinion being rammed down their throat and refused to get the shot. They have been restored to service and are getting back pay. He has likewise, within the last 24, 48 hours, signed another executive order, and that is they will withhold federal funding to any school that mandates that students have to have the COVID jab. So if a school tries to force a kid to get that COVID jab or to have it in order to attend school, well, that school will lose federal funding as per my reading of the executive order that Donald J. Trump recently signed. I know that a lot of people, the COVID jabs came out under his administration, the so-called warp speed program that they came out with. And anyone who knows anything about science knows that warp, this concept of warp speed, of bending the fabric of space-time. It's a neat concept. It's in Star Trek. When you see, warp factor 9 or warp factor 4 or whatever speed they go, and they give a decent visual representation of it, it's the bending of space-time. Well, it's science fiction. It's not science. At some point, it may become science, but right now it's science fiction. So to say they developed the COVID jabs at warp speed, no, they didn't. It wasn't done at warp speed. It was done at normal speed. To give you a representation of how this concept of warp speed would work, is here we have 10 years. I don't know if that's showing up on the screen there. Yeah, it does there. 10 years. That's a 10-year timeline. And what you do, bending the fabric of bending the fabric of time. I'm going to put a little hole through this, and then what you can do is you take the fabric of time, bend it, and the pen goes through one side and comes out the other. I've seen others do it. They do it better than I can, but that's the idea. You're bending the fabric of time, of space and time. You're bending it. Well, that's a neat concept, and maybe someday they'll figure out some way to bend this fabric of space-time. But as things currently stand, and certainly in 2020, you can't do that. And so you can't take a 10-year process, 10 plus years, from concept to preclinical to animal studies to phase 1, then a phase 2, then a phase 3. You can't redact that down into just a few short months because warp speed doesn't exist. And but they got a large percentage of the population to believe that you can take a 10-year plus process and reduce it down and come out with a quote unquote safe and effective product. And now they're poised. They already have, apparently. Moderna was given, I think it's 175 or so million dollars to come out with an mRNA shot for bird flu. And we need to be vigilant. We need to be aware. We need to keep our wits about us because, it's so easy in this world to get distracted and to be worried about. In the NHL, they have this, what, Four Nations Cup or something. We just have the Super Bowl, got the NBA, spring training for baseball is going to be starting soon. We got all these distractions. We got all our streaming shows. We got gaming. And you look at these 14, 15, 16, 17-year-old kids that the Canadian Liberal Party is allowing to vote in our next prime minister. Half these kids are just, that if you ask them a question like, does a bill in Canada become law before the prime minister signs it, or is the prime minister required to sign a piece of legislation before it becomes law? Most of them won't even be aware of the fact, and I will say most, that's my opinion, most of them won't even be aware of the fact that the prime minister doesn't actually have to sign it. It's the governor general signing on behalf of the crown, on behalf of the king, as things currently stand. It's unbelievably crazy and stupid what is happening. Anyway, I'm going to end my video there. It's about as much as I wanted to say. I do not want Mark Carney to be the next Prime Minister of Canada. I have my misgivings about Pierre Poilievre, but given the choices available, that's where I'm going right now. That's who I want to see win. I do not like seeing Poilievre now he's joining in, wrapping himself in the flag, just like everyone else. It's like when we saw, the Ukraine war and everyone started to put on their profile pic the Ukrainian flag. I stand with Ukraine, and I stand with this, and putting their signs out on their lawn saying, I got the shot. And now he's joined in with this mob mentality, thinking that the United States is somewhat, a foreign country, not Canada, that they're, shouldn't have the right to try and promote and protect their own steel and aluminum industry or any other industry they decide. It's so weird. It's the globalist forces that want this post-nationalist world where protectionism and looking after your own nation and its citizens first, they don't want that. The globalist parties don't. They want to live in a post-nationalized world, the same as the Liberal Party of Canada. And here we have the United States, and Donald Trump in particular, pushing back against this globalist ideology and saying, no, America first. And now we have Canadians who previously had been all against globalism are now embracing it. You have to let us, it's an open border. You got to let us sell our steel and aluminum products. No, they don't have to let us. The one thing I would like to see is, if Trump wants to do this, I wish, rather than trying to say, no, don't bring them in, I would say to Trump, like that'll ever happen, but regardless, I'd like to see them phased in over a period of time, 5% every 6 months, so that over a 2.5-year period or so, then you get to your 25, and don't deliver a shock sudden jolt to the Canadian economy, because since that free trade agreement got signed back in 1988, 37 years ago, the Canadian and US economies have become incredibly globalistically integrated. And that's the reality of the situation we're in right now. I would like to see them, the Americans, if you want to change things, fair enough, but rather than introducing a jolt shock to our integrated economy, do it in a more gradual fashion, 5% every 6 months, and then in 2.5 years, you've got your 25% tariff, and that'll give industry some time, and importers, exporters, time to adjust to the new reality. Uh, uh, Animarchy likes my dissertation. Thank you. Um, and then I have Animarchy writing that reminds me of the rapper High Res Lyrics from his song Anti Everything. I support the current causes. I got empathy and manners. Pray for country's flags and Black Lives Matter in my banner. Oh, yeah. Yeah, we're programmed what to think, what to feel, what to believe. I say it all the time. Interestingly, I've said that many times. I've been saying it on my channel for probably 2+ years. I started doing these videos. I became a YouTuber in late 2020, just as the jabs were being imposed on us. And my first video was actually reporting on information that had been dropped by the CDC on the number of people who had experienced inability to go to work, negative reactions to the shots. And I think it was 2.5% within just the first few days. 2.5% of the people getting the shot within 2 or 3 days couldn't go to work. There were all kinds of, and that's my first video. And after that, I've been doing more and more and more, and now I'm doing them several times a week, sometimes, many nights in a row. And now I forgot why I went down that. And Narky wrote good dissertation, yeah, but when I go off on a side note, then I lose the central theme of what I was talking about. Um, uh, well, yeah, anyway, I for a while now have been saying the media programs you what to think, what to believe, and how to feel. And J.D. Vance just gave a speech to something called the Munich Security Conference, I think, MSC, Munich, to pronounce it in the German fashion, Munich Security Conference. And I believe he used that exact same phraseology. He talked about media programming what to believe, think, and feel. And I found that interesting. I'm wondering, is JD Vance listening to my videos? But Nothing New Under the Sun, my favorite book in the Bible, well, one of them, Ecclesiastes, where it says there's nothing new under the sun, everything is just vanity chasing the wind. And just because I came up with this idea of the media programs you what to think, feel, believe, came up with it organically on my own, but at the same time, I have to recognize I might have heard it somewhere in the background, in the periphery, and it might have gotten into my subconscious through osmosis. So, but you never know. Just interesting. I found the phraseology exactly the same. Amonarchy is also talking about the fact that the woke left liberal mob hijacked a biblical symbol, that being the rainbow. The rainbow, Christians will know, and students of the Bible will know. You don't have to be a Christian to be a student of the Bible, although I think the two go hand in hand. If you are a Christian, you should be a student of the Bible, but not every student of the Bible is necessarily a Christian. But anyway, in the book of Genesis, I think it's around chapter 6, where God destroys the earth, Noah and the flood. And then when the flood is abated, Noah comes out on Mount Ararat, and then God sets his bow down. Think of a bow and arrow, a weapon of war in the ancient world. And God set his bow down in the sky, the rainbow, as a sign of his covenant promise never to flood the earth again. It's a biblical symbol, and it was hijacked by the LGBTQXMNLNOP, the alphabet soup community. Although they have since, yeah, this whole idea of categorizing people, they keep having to come up with more and more categories. And so they've got more and more colors in the flag, more shapes. The rainbow wasn't good enough. It wasn't a big enough representation. And there was just a pride parade down in New Zealand. You can check this out. It's going somewhat viral right now on places like X and Facebook, where New Zealand, a bunch of guys many of whom look to be native New Zealanders, whether they're called Maori or Maori. I'm not sure exactly how you pronounce it. The Maori, Maori is how I think it's spelled, and many will know the New Zealand rugby team, the All Blacks is the name of them. The All Blacks perform the haka, where it's a bunch of guys and they and it's toxic masculinity on steroids, but that is the Maori culture. They were a warrior people, and they do this haka. They show off their, and the a lot of, now there did appear to be some white male New Zealanders there as well, some Kiwis, but a lot of them to me looked native, and they were performing the haka and blocking a pride parade from going through, and they had the police standing right in front of them as they perform this haka. I like seeing the haka. It's neat. Um, and I have Antimonarchy writing that he's gone to work on enough hangovers. Uh, COVID shots must be real harsh. So it's been many years since I went to work after a night of drinking. I would be back in my teens and 20s. 20s would be the last time I did it. Uh, and then it goes on to say, there's nothing better in life than to eat, drink, and be merry. Uh, I think that one is also from Ecclesiastes. I think you're right as well. It says, the best we can hope for. You can read the book. The best we can hope for. I think that's a paraphrase, but to eat, drink, be merry, to live our lives, to be happy, without strife. It's a book. Ecclesiastes is held that it was written by Solomon late in his life, after he's lived a long, full, and rich life, married to goodness knows how many women, 80 maybe. Uh, and don't worry about the spelling, Antimonarchy. I couldn't spell it. Not a chance. But at any rate, I'm going to throw it out. I'm coming up on the hour. I've gone 47 minutes. I want to throw out an invitation. And the invitation is this: I'm starting to figure out some functionality with this YouTube space. And if anyone wants to be a guest, if anyone would like to interact with me, not in a live, but just a discussion on any number of topics, whatever you want, really. Unless it's something really esoteric that I have absolutely zero knowledge of. I don't want to talk about NASCAR racing. I don't want to talk about Aussie rules football and the standings and who's the best Aussie rules football player of all time. I only know one named Jacko. Um, but if you want to talk about broad-based topics, things that are on the news, current events, and would like to do a podcast style with me, I'm going to I want to do it over what is called StreamYard. It's a platform that recently got introduced to me by my friend in Montreal, George Antonios, who does his Counsel and Might, and it appears to have good functionality and simple to use, which is important to me. So that's an invitation, because I do want to grow the channel and I do want to put out engaging content, and me just speaking all the time. Reading the live chat is nice, but it would be nice to talk in person live. So if you think you're up for putting your thoughts, views, and opinions out there, and pushing back against the narrative, or even embracing it, I don't care. A little controversy. I mean, it's boring if everyone agrees. I wouldn't mind, like Sio Jamalik and I seem to be a little. I appreciate the fact that she keeps coming back. I haven't seen her today, but she comes back on a lot, and she seems to push back at a lot of what I have to say. She seems to be far more embracing of what I'll call the prescribed narrative, and that's fair enough. I mean, the one thing we all need to do is we need to get out of our echo chambers, and we need to be challenged. And so whoever would like to, my email address is in the description to this channel, uh, but it's Canadian, Canadian, Canadian Soapbox, all one word, all lowercase, Canadian Soapbox at gmail.com, not .ca.com, and send me an email. Write in it, I don't know, subject line, put the word podcast in the subject line, and that'll let me know. Um, and then Amnarchy has one more note down. He got that quote about eat, drink, and be merry from Stargate SG1. Paraphrasing it, goes with the space time stuff. Fair enough. If that's what you're talking about, eat, drink, and be merry. If that was the quote you were referencing, or if it was something else. Um, at any rate, I'll leave it there. I didn't get too much into scripture tonight. It is a Sunday. I didn't make it to church today, not with this weather. Um, it's been crazy. But at any rate, the way I like to end my videos is to quote from the end of chapter 6 of the book of Numbers, end of chapter 6 or 7. It's a blessing that Aaron speaks over God's covenant chosen people. And I believe we are all called to be God's covenant chosen people. We can do that. We can be branched onto that cultivated vine by inviting Jesus Christ into our heart, laying down our egos is the biggest part. Laying down our ego, humbling ourselves at the foot of the cross and saying, you take the wheel, Jesus. And we can do that. And then we can be part of God's covenant chosen people. And Jesus has gone to prepare a place for us. And the blessing that was spoken over God's covenant chosen people was this: may the Lord bless and keep you. May the Lord make his face to shine upon you and lift up his countenance upon you. And may the Lord be gracious to you and grant you peace. And as I always say, he will. And Chair's right. I am in a good mood. What do you mean, cheer up? I don't like the fact, the political situation in Canada, but I'm not worried about it in the sense that this is my father's world. And I've got an advocate. And I've got low moral fiber. Says, Amen. Wish you all the best. Love and blessings from Costa Rica. Muchos gracias, amigo. And that's as far as I'm going to go in the Spanish language. And Sheriff says, Amen. So we'll see you all probably tomorrow night. And who knows, if something comes up between now and 10, 11 p.m., I may do another one. But I would love to get some emails. And fill in the comment field down below, too. If you watch this later and you can't use live chat, fill up the comment field. If you like Mark Carney, are you ready for him to be anointed? Are you thrilled with the idea of how the Liberals are conducting an election for the next Prime Minister of Canada? Unbelievable what they're doing. Talk to you soon.